Hi, I am Verdaillia Turner, and this is Let's Talk. And we are going to do a series of interviews with Atlanta Public School candidates. And to my right,
Omar Ali, president of Ali Development.
So our candidate today is from District 9 at large, and I pronounce her name, and she just told me how. Mrs. NKoyoene Lewis, and the name means woman can do anything. All right, so I present to you the District 9 candidate for Atlanta Public Schools, Mrs. Lewis.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, and I look forward to our time to speak together. Is this my opportunity to introduce myself?
Okay. Mrs. Lewis, you are running against a person that was appointed by the board to District 9, Ms. Jessica Johnson.
That's correct.
Tell us why you're challenging for that seat.
Well, as someone who has been in education for nearly 20 years, I came to Atlanta to teach. I've coached teachers. I have sat with families when they haven't gotten what they needed from the school district as an attorney representing kids in special education and school discipline matters. And as a parent who right now has both had a child go through the school system that we didn't get all of the things that we would have hoped, and he was neurodivergent, so we had a lot of challenges in terms of just getting the support and the things he was legally entitled to. And also having two small kids, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, who are getting ready to start their experience in APS, I believe deeply that we have an urgency of now. Like, we need to make sure that our schools are meeting the needs of our communities, our children, our staff, our educators right now. And so I just believe that I bring a series of ideas, perspectives, experiences that I believe the board could use right now to make sure that we're designing a school system that works for every cluster, for every classroom, and for every child. And that is something that I am absolutely committed to using my skills, experience, and talent to do, to engage the community in a process of designing an APS that works for all of us.
What do you do for a living?
For a living, I'm currently the Director of Law Practice Management for the State Bar of Georgia. So in that role, I coach and consult with attorneys and help them start, scale, or shut down their law practice with less stress. The goal is to modernize our law practice so that we are building a more inclusive and innovative practice to close the access to legal services gap and make sure that our attorneys are able to deliver an exceptional service without having to work around the clock. So a very similar type of issue that I experienced as an educator, and that I know that many of my friends in education are experiencing, is figuring out how we design something that allows us to bring all of our talents and gifts to bear without depleting ourselves.
Do you know how Atlanta chooses its attorneys and about how much we're spending on attorneys now in every area in Atlanta Public Schools?
I believe they're supposed to go through an RFP process, but it's my understanding they've had the same attorney for quite some time. So I don't know entirely what all of that process looks like. I think generally across all school systems, they're supposed to have an RFP process, and some of the information should be public. In terms of how much they're spending, I believe you could at least do an open records request generally to find that out, but I don't know the exact amount of what is being spent.
And that's just bringing up something else for me. My background is teacher.
Okay.
If you are elected to the Board of Education, we definitely would like that process to continue. If you are not elected, we want that process to continue, to look at who all of those lawyers are and how much they're costing us. I have one more question before Omar.
Yes.
He's jumping at the bits over here. Parent involvement. Tell us what we can do comprehensively to include all of our parents within the schools.
Yes, I love this question because it's actually at the core of a lot of what I do. When I was representing families, what I found is it's often very challenging for parents, caregivers to have dignified experiences with the school system, to ask their questions and get answers in a timely fashion. And sometimes that's a function of just things take time, we have to look at it. But also sometimes it's just that we weren't getting communicated with. I know even being a parent and walking into a building advocating for my child and seeing people not look excited to see me makes you feel less comfortable or excited to be in those spaces. And so one of the things that I think is really important is that we develop a comprehensive engagement plan and a policy and really figure out how, by engaging the community in two-way feedback, right? Not just a survey that goes home every so often and responses are given, but we don't hear or feel what happens with our responses, but actually going into the community and having conversations with our families about what things are working or what things are not working and how we can better engage. I think thinking about different ways to even leverage all of the technology that's out there now and even present information in different ways. So I have spent a lot of time in the disability community, and so we think about how we put out communication. Like maybe an email isn't accessible for everyone, right? Perhaps we could have pictographs or infographics or other different types of ways, video, et cetera, to engage our families so that they can understand and feel like they can at least come to the table as an equal. And I think that that's not always something that happens, but is absolutely something that we can, with all of the knowledge and skill in our buildings, figure out ways to meet our families where they are as well.
So, trades. I want to get your opinion and thoughts on bringing trades back into school. Trade program.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we are in a world where we have to prepare our students for all of the options, and like those options should be available for them. I'm one who's really big on people being able to have actual and true choice, meaning that they can pick from different options because they're equipped to do either one of them, and so they can choose. And I think that we are definitely in a space where we have leaned heavily into college readiness and people going straight to college, which I think is great for some students. That's fantastic. I know for my child, college wasn't the most ideal step for him next, but there weren't pathways for him outside of that. And so I think it'll be really important for us to make sure that there are lots of pathways in our schools so that our students can be successful and our educators can show up and deliver, even in the community, and thinking about different ways that we engage people in helping people prepare for trade, apprenticeships, et cetera, would make our school system more well-rounded, and I think would be better able to meet our students where they are and help them get to where they want to go.
So speaking of that, entrepreneurship, do you have any ideas or initiatives to bring entrepreneurship back into schools? I think that is something that's vital and key for economics, especially in Black and brown areas.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we're here in Atlanta, like we're in a hub of just an entrepreneurial space, and I actually think that it is something that is present already in our communities, and we think we need to figure out ways to better amplify that, how we can connect with organizations around that are already doing that work, how we can make sure that we're exposing students to entrepreneurs and just even that way of thinking in our schools. And I'm not sure that our traditional curriculum always does that, but I think we're at a place where we can leverage a lot of different ideas and innovation to help students move forward. And I think that there's a strong economic argument for that in terms of even just research that's been going on for decades, I would say, about where the world and the future of work is going. And so if we're preparing children for the future that they are going to encounter, we need to prepare them with the skills to be able to start their own business. And that might be something that they could do even while they're in school and potentially get credit for it if we think about how we are educating and preparing people for what's next.
I think that we're going to need, the school board is going to need an extremely strong voice to push back against facilities. Are you prepared to do that, and how would you push back against facilities? Because facilities can make and break communities, especially when it comes to dilapidated buildings that sit in their communities, mostly in the poor communities.
Absolutely. I want to be a voice for people whose voices are not always heard and acted upon. I always say I believe that our best solutions come from people who are closest to the problem, who are living and dealing with the challenges, and that if we provide them with the agency, support, and resources that they need, they could potentially create better solutions, more enduring solutions than what we might experience or think about being so far removed from that. And so I think absolutely, like my goal is to make sure that community voice is heard, and if our community is saying that they want something, they need something, and they're ready to move forward with something, then it is our role to make sure that that can work, and that we can be amplifying what they need to make sure that our community schools and our communities are ultimately strong.
So you have no problem with telling facilities no?
I have no problem telling anybody no if the thing that they're doing does not align with what we want to see for children and communities.
Okay.
And so we have so many various communities here in Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta all of my life.
Ooh, yes.
And I have seen, though, two communities, one being people who are disenfranchised, and the other being what I call supremacist politicians, even if they are of my race. Often we expect other people to do this.
Right.
But a lot of times people who look like me, look like you, have money and people behind them, and they tell the community what is going to happen or what they need. I very seldom hear about an organic approach in the community. I know that the Ali company, the company that you're with, yourself, over in, Omar, calling you your dad's name, over in Lakewood, you all have been very active in the community. I'm just saying that. They've been very active in the community and helping to develop the community. But they've gotten a lot of pushback from people who are well connected, money-wise, and come in from other places, and they develop exactly what they want to develop because they got somebody sitting on the board. Sometimes they go over to City Hall to get other positions. Sometimes they go over to the State House to get other positions. And those people, a lot of them are not from here, but you don't have to be qualified to be, to be from here. Most people are not. And they sell us a bag of whatever.
That is correct.
And the community, one that left out, people that's been living there for years, paying taxes for years, had those churches and small businesses and et cetera, but it's very little interest because there's not a whole lot of big profit in that for others. But these communities should perhaps look different, but it's what the community could do and be invested in to make everything work for them.
That's correct.
And some of our children could actually work into industries and stores and businesses that are put around what their interests may be. Go ahead.
No, you're 100% right. I think Nkoyoene, you was about to make a statement.
Oh, I was just going to say, when I came back to Atlanta after law school, I went to law school in New York, and I made a point to return to Atlanta because I wanted my property tax, my effort to go back into the very community that shaped me. I'm not from Atlanta, but my experience moving here, I moved here to teaching, helped me to see a vibrant community that has so much strength, so many positives, et cetera. And I wanted to be a part of that fold, and I wanted to help amplify and add to that. And so when I came back to practice, I was practicing in a big law firm. I had some great experiences there, but I ultimately decided to start my own practice, focusing on education and enterprise, because I wanted to be a part of revitalizing communities alongside the community. Not a for us, not a for them, not on behalf of, but alongside, which really means that you have to be willing to listen, willing to sometimes put what you think is the best or better path to the side to make sure that people have agency and support in that process. And so I think, when we talk about communities and what's happening there and how the city is changing, we all want growth. We all want our communities to look wonderful, to feel safe, et cetera, but they shouldn't be done so at the expense of the people who are living there, who have been there, who have been a part of that. And I think there are ways to make sure that everyone is a part of that fold and the fabric, and that we are bringing together all of our positives and creating the environments and the communities that we want. And that's the type of leader that I want to be. That is how I showed up as an attorney. That's how I showed up as a teacher, as someone who's really here to work with people. I don't believe that just because I have a certain set of skills or experiences that I am more knowledgeable or that my voice should have more power or weight. I think that we all come together bringing gifts, and we have to do what we can and what's best to make sure that the many are benefiting and that it's not just the few.
Expound on your teaching career. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I came to Atlanta in 2006. I taught in Fulton County. I taught 4th grade, all subjects, and happened to be pretty good at teaching literacy. So my students, whether they came in on grade level or not, we were able to move the needle and make sure that they were leaving me, if not on grade level or beyond, closer to where they needed to be, so that when they got to 5th grade, which at the time that I was teaching, they had to take the CRCT. That'll date myself, but I mean, the grades will let you know. I've been at it for a bit. They had to pass multiple tests before they would be able to go on to middle school. So I really worked with my grade level. I had the opportunity also to be the grade level chair for my fourth grade team, and the fifth grade team, I was on the vertical team to make sure that we were preparing them for what they needed to be successful in fifth grade, which would hopefully set them up to be successful in middle school and beyond. So I did that work, was convinced to leave the classroom to go and teach or coach teachers. I'm a person who is driven by impact, and so the notion of being able to take some of the success that I had in my classroom and equip other teachers to do that in multiple classrooms across the city was very compelling to me. So I spent a few years coaching teachers, first and second year teachers in Fulton County and APS. Got to see all of K through 12 and see that some of the challenges that we experienced were systemic issues. They weren't about teachers who were not motivated or not willing to work hard or not prepared. That's not what my experience was, from veteran teachers on to even the more novice teachers that came in. I saw a lot of people who were committed every day to the job of working with children, to helping develop children, who were willing to lean in and be more than a teacher, to be a parent, a social worker, a therapist, all the different things so they could make sure that their children, their students got what they needed. And so I spent some time then equipping teachers to make sure that they could also feel the gains themselves and see, leveraging data and relationships, their students be successful.
What is your position on partner schools?
On partner schools?
Mm-hmm.
So I am a proponent of strong community schools. I think that what is really very necessary for us is that we make sure that where children are showing up in classrooms, that they're getting the support that they need. I think we have a lot of different ways that we've been trying to do that, and I appreciate the ideas around innovation and experimentation, et cetera. But what we do know is that the majority of our students sit in traditional schools. That the way that the structure that some of our partner and charter schools is set up, it doesn't afford for every child to be able to be there. And so it's my commitment as a future board member to make sure that our traditional schools are strong, to make sure that our communities feel confident and comfortable sending their children to school every day, so that we can get those numbers back, we can rebuild the trust, and we can, as a community, come together and make sure that our children are well, which I think also leads to our communities being safe, strong, and stable, and all of us being well.
We talk about literacy and reading, and other candidates, as we've heard, are pretty strong on that initiative. And the American Federation of Teachers recently relaunched a campaign about the importance of literacy.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the ways that we can encourage young people to want to read, other than just traditional classroom approaches and the top-down curriculum to them? What are the things, some of the, because I'm not gonna get into the critical race theory stuff and the, taking books out of extrapolating books and that kind of thing. But I have my own opinion about that. Tell us what you think about how we can encourage them to read, to want to read.
I think, one, reading has to be fun again. I think a lot of times it becomes such a pressure cooker for students, and like, I must do this, and if they don't feel successful, a lot of us, we shy. I'm one of those people, when I don't feel successful with something, that's not the thing that I lean in to do the most. So I think, there's the piece of making sure that we're teaching the fundamentals of reading so that people feel successful, they feel capable of doing it. And I think that there's also the piece of like giving people the freedom to read for pleasure, read because it's fun, read because they enjoy it. I am a nerd. I am self-proclaimed. My husband will tell you I love to read. And I love to read because when I was younger, people read to me. My mom always tells the story of my older sister who taught me the alphabet. We used to sit on the chair together, and she would read the books to me while I sat there and listened. And I even see with my son now, who's like at that place where he's beginning to read, that, when we're forcing it down him, he's not interested. But if we're just sitting there to read at bedtime with dad or with other folks, my mom is a storyteller, and just sitting and reading and coming up with his own stories, there's a joy that comes there. And I think that we need to bring that back, that reading doesn't just have to be for information or to be able to answer comprehension questions, that it can be something that's fun. And I think that at least in my household, we try to show our kids that we read also so that they see it. We try to experience that with them and let them pick books that they want to read, regardless of what level it is on, so they can at least have the joy of that and understand what experimentation and freedom and imagination is, so that they have that to hold on to, in addition to then eventually having to learn how to read to find information and do all of the other not necessarily always fun things that we have to do with reading, but that at least there's a place where there is at least joy in that.
Okay.
Omar, you got another question?
Not right now.
Well, I do. Okay. When new boards especially, are coming in, because
Yes.
Atlanta, I see now, is staggered. It used to be everybody at one time. There are various entities that train boards. I hate to use that word, but they do. What type of training do you think the board as a whole should have?
So I'm gonna be a bit of an attorney here. I think boards have specific duties and responsibilities, and I think from my hat as a lawyer, governance is really important, and I think there needs to be strong governance training to make sure people understand what their roles and their responsibilities are and how the board should work. I also think that there is the nuts and bolts of getting the work done, but there's also the piece of figuring out how to negotiate and collaborate and come to consensus on the things, which means sometimes you're going to work with someone who you don't want to. Sometimes you're going to have to put your opinions to the side to figure out actually where can we move forward. And so I think that there needs to be always, anytime anyone is in a position of leadership, there needs to be training around conflict resolution, change management, like how do we pivot when we think one thing is the route to go and we see perhaps from the community or others that is not what they want to do. How do we take information and feedback and use that to move us forward in a way that allows us to maintain relationship and consensus with our constituents? And I say constituents broadly, right? We have stakeholders. There are lots of different stakeholders who are a part of the education system. And we need to make sure that we're hearing from them, but we have to be careful that we're not giving outsized power to different groups at the expense of what's the main thing that we should be doing, which is ensuring that our children are getting the education that they need. I think the only other thing that I might add, and I don't know if it's something that can happen or not, is I think it's helpful for people to understand what the outcomes should look like in classrooms and schools and buildings, and what that culture needs to be, so that from top down it is clear and modeled for everyone of like how we want our district to run.
Are there any lobbyists that you know that Atlanta Public Schools has employed right now? I mean, for the state, lobbyists to the state.
I'm going to tell I always say this and I joke. I'm like, I'm not a politician, so I don't know a whole lot about those things. I think for the bulk of the time that I have been in Atlanta, except for stepping into this role where now it's like all these pieces come into place, I've been putting my head down, let's do the thing that's right for children. And I hope to continue to be a leader that leads with that focus. But I know I'm hearing that there are a lot of other things that are outside there, and I hope to be someone on the board who can help us remain focused on the main thing.
In your opinion, and about the lobbyists, yes, there is a lobbyist or two, because we would like to see lobbyists from public school districts be able to work together, even with the teacher organizations. So most boards say that we love our teacher organizations, but they don't reach out, or nor do they respond. Many of them don't respond. It's just individuals, because it works for them. You are running at large.
Correct.
There are 9 seats on Atlanta Public Schools. How many at large seats? All of them are not up. Are there 3 at large?
There are 3 at large seats. 2 of them are up for election this cycle.
And give us just roughly the boundaries of District 9.
Yep, so District 9, in order to run for District 9, again, it's a citywide, so anyone in the city of Atlanta can vote, but in order to run for it, you need to reside in either District 5, Mays Cluster primarily, which is where I reside, or in District 6. And so there's like a residency attendance requirement for who can run for that seat. But it is, as an at-large seat, and one of the reasons why I was very interested in it is that you're there to make sure, of course, that the entire district is running and functioning optimally. So while we have like District 5, who I would, each of their district seats there to make sure that they're really hearing from their clusters and what they need, then I think that the at-large positions take that information and provide that perspective back also of like, well, what does that look like across our district, so that ultimately APS works for everyone, and not just one district or one side of town versus the other. And that's really what has really inspired me and motivates me to run at large.
Is there anything that you would like to say about the person that's been holding the seat for just a few months now? Because I understand that person was handpicked by the board. And I'm like, what? But anyway, okay. So anything you want to talk about in that regards?
Yeah, well, what I would say ultimately is, they had an appointment process. I was a part of that process also. Ultimately, I wasn't selected. I think that she is a very nice person. I think she's got a great background of things that she's been doing, but I'm not sure that that's exactly what we need right now when we're facing such persistent issues that have been going on for decades, right? I think it's an opportunity now to really have someone in this seat who has been in the classroom, who understands what it takes to teach, who's been under standards, who understands what it's like to have people that you have to respond to, a PSC that you have to make sure that you're in compliance with, and all those types of things, and that responsibility to parents and students each day. I think it is also really important to have the perspective of a parent on the board in that seat. I know we have some parents. I think I would have the youngest kids currently on the board. And so, what I'm thinking about and the ideas that I'm bringing are not just around what we can do right now, but also there's the urgency of right now. We need to make sure that the classrooms and the environment is different now because we have some real challenges and we have kids in school right now. I had a 11th grader ask me, I hear a lot of these things about what we're going to do for the future, but like I'm in 11th grade right now, like what's going to be different for me on Monday? And I said, that is a great question, and I appreciate you bringing that to me to the charge, because we have to remember that people are experiencing our system right now. And then also recognizing, I know for me, like my son, we're in May's cluster, he'll be starting kindergarten next year, like that's a 13-year journey that we have in there. And so the decisions that we're making right now have to both be able to balance the urgency of right now and set us up for a better future, because our kids are continuing to go through there. And I think that that's a perspective and a lived experience that I bring. I also understand what it's like, how challenging it is to sit on the other side of the table as a parent or a community member and not be able to get the things that you need to make sure that your child is able to show up and be successful. And so I think I have a level of empathy and understanding and experience negotiating, figuring out how we rebuild trust so that we can work together, that I think is really necessary right now with the challenges that APS is facing today.
This school board has not been able to retain a superintendent. And in your opinion, why?
So I think it's twofold, right? You need to make sure that you're hiring for the right person, and I think that there is some piece of that that's making sure we're hiring for the needs that we currently have. And so I like data. It's the lawyer in me. I love evidence, right? So we have an equity audit. We have all this information that tells us what are the challenges that we're facing in APS, and I think it's finding the who is equipped to solve the challenges that we have right now and help us get to where we want to go. I'm not there's a question of whether, when they've brought us their one person, if the who has been the right who or not. And then I think the other piece of that is when you bring someone in, you have to manage and support that person. You have to make sure that you're holding them accountable. And so I think whenever, and I've been, I've done some employment law, I've had to coach and train folks that when we have to let people go, that's not just the issue with that person. It's got to, come back and be reflective. What things did we do? Did we not do? Could we do better? And we would hope to see that learning happening from superintendent to superintendent. And it would be my goal as someone on the board to make sure that we're very clear with the superintendent around what the goals are, what we're focused on. We can't do everything at one time. That typically doesn't work. Right. So really being very clear about what is it that we want to see in year 1, year 2, 3, year 4 of this contract, and making sure that we're meeting those goals so that, one, we can get the progress, right? Like no one wants to get into a job and not do it well, right? And that if there are places where we need to add support, that we as a board can be looking at what additional support might be necessary or useful to help this person meet their goals and their responsibility and equip them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And hold them accountable when they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. District 9, you have to reach more people and tell all of us, because we're going to put all your websites up.
Yes.
Where could the public go to look at your financial disclosure? Because we're going to tell them where to go to contribute.
Yeah.
But you can tell them that too.
Yes.
You can tell them that too. All right, go ahead. Last statement.
So, one, I would love the opportunity to represent you, to be your voice on the board, to make sure, again, that we are doing all that we can to ensure that every cluster has its needs met, that every child can be in a can have their needs met, and that every classroom has an innovative teacher who is valued and respected and equipped to show up and do the very hard work that they do. You can find me all over social media at Nkoyo for APS. That's Nkoyo for APS. I'm on social, Facebook, Instagram, and then the website also is nkoyoforaps.com. Our disclosures are available. You can go to the city site. I'm excited for you to see and go through there. We've been very pleased to have a strong showing of friends and family, people that I have worked with who have seen me in action contribute to the campaign. And so I think it's Easy Finance, I don't know the exact website of where they can find
we'll
it.
make sure.
Yeah, but yeah, check me out. Like I am, what you see is what you get, honestly. So I would love for you to follow along and share the journey. I always share people. I'm a first-time candidate. I was literally just working and raising my kids before I decided to step into this race. And so I hope to be at least demystifying some of this process along the way and engaging you in a conversation around what is possible for our schools, for our children, for our communities, and ultimately for us.
Okay.
So we've heard from Attorney Nkoyoene Lewis, Mrs. Lewis. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Good
much.
luck.
Thank you.
Okay.